Namaste. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. A very warm welcome to yet another session in our Weekend with Wisdom series. Let us begin this session with an invocation. Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunattu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Harihi Om. This is the fourth session in our Weekend with Wisdom series. In this series, we have been dwelling upon the topic Eternal Wisdom, a Manual to Life. And guiding us through the talks is Vinayji. Thank you so much, Vinayji, for joining us. So we are really looking forward to this session. It has been really an amazing ride to have journeyed with you over these 2 days. We are looking forward to the culmination of this beautiful journey with you. Over to you, Vinayji. Thank you.
Thank you. Hari Om. So the final session, I would be sailing you all through what is the blueprint to an inspired action. It would have the ninefold path. What are the qualities of the wise, and how by synergizing and resonating towards a common goal, one would achieve success, one would achieve prosperity, one would achieve peace. So what is the ninefold path? In fact, before I get on to the ninefold path, if you understand, if you look at what drives life, it is not wrong to say that action is the very symbol of life. Whenever you choose not to act, one instantly pays the price. What price? The price one pays is inaction, is literal death. Tamas is literal stagnation. So action is the symbol, action is the insignia of life, and inaction is death. So much so that the Shastras, the Upanishads, the Ishavasya Upanishad, the very second mantra, roars this message, roars this truth, that you must get on with action. It says, Kurvan neveha karmani jijivishe shatagu samaaha evam tvainanyateto osti na karma lipyate nare kurvan eva karmani shatah samaha. Performing actions alone here, one should live 100 years, shatah samaha. And when you perform such actions, actions do not stain a man. You're not stained by the actions you perform. So, what kind of actions these great masters are talking about? In fact, it wouldn't be difficult to understand these great men only knew one type of action. They only knew of performing the selfless actions, the highest of ever actions ever known to mankind. So the highest action one can ever perform is to be selfless, to be sacrificial. So the ninefold path gives us that tool, a guideline, how we can embark using this wisdom, how we can embark on that journey to achieve that excellence, that glory, achieve success, achieve the highest spiritual success through adopting the path of action. So the ninefold path consists of, you get an idea as to what all the elements or the ingredients are. So the first element, I quickly mention them, I explain one by one. First is the chronology of action. Other day, earlier session, somebody were talking about the vasanas, and here I talk of the vasanas. Then we talk of your predominant nature. What is your swadharma? Then why it is important that you must act on reason. The fourth, you should integrate your inner personality. You must integrate your head and heart into whatever you do. And you must understand that action is neutral, is neither good nor bad. Then what makes an action what it is? It talks of the three types of action. Then what is that use as a guidelines to uphold or uplift your action? We talk of the conscience. And then we talk of the essential ingredient, consistency. And lastly, what is an ideal action? So I'll quickly get into the ninefold path. But a man of wisdom is one who thinks like a man of action. So there is a beautiful saying, you must think like a man of action and act like a man of thought. So any thought you have, it must find its way, it must fructify itself into action. And whatever actions you perform, ensure it has a profound thought backing it. So think like a man of action means whatever thoughts you entertain, or whatever dialogue, whatever wise thoughts we are exchanging, they must ultimately fructify into action. And because if it doesn't translate into action, it remains as mere theories, mere information. That's the reason we said we are observing, we are examining, we are understanding the eternal wisdom from an applied philosophy, how it can change and transform your life. So the first point is the chronology of action. What is the origin of action? Every action you perform, whether you perform it knowingly or unknowingly, every action you perform has to have an origin. So what is said is the origin, you go back into the root of your action, the very cause, the seed of your action. The seed of your action is your vasana. Vasana is the seed or the cause, the root of your action. From the vasana emerges a thought. A thought in Sanskrit is known as sankalpa. You entertain a thought or a sankalpa. Now, where did that sankalpa come from? Where did that thought come from? It has come from the vasana. So the vasana manifests as thoughts, and a thought manifests as a desire, and a desire expresses as karma, action. So this is the chronology: vasana, thought, desire, action. Now, vasana is said to be that it's a particular inclination, it's a particular aptitude, it is a leaning for something in particular. So vasana is something that you're born with. So based on the vasanas, you have an inclination to do something in particular. Now, based on your vasanas, what you need to choose is what is your predominant nature. So every human has got what is known as swadharma. So swadharma is one's own nature. Swa in Sanskrit means one's own. Now here we are interpreting that swadharma as your predominant nature, that which stands out, is dominating in your personality. And para dharma means something which is alien, which is not your nature. Now, when you look at nature, when you look around, every object or every being has a unique nature, has a unique quality, has a unique attribute. And more than that, it is so true to its nature that it is defined by that unique quality or attribute that it possesses. In fact, if you just have to look at the world, look at things around you, and you will understand and accept, you'll agree with me that everything has a unique nature or quality. Now, let me sail you through to understand what I mean. Like every object or being, as I said, has a dharma or a nature. Now, if you take a quick look, a few examples, the moment I say sugar, instantly you understand sugar means it's sweet. That is the dharma. Either you find a sweet it is too sweet or less sweet, but it still has to be sweet. That is sugar. The nature of bitter gourd is its bitterness. It is so bitter. The nature of fire is its heat. The nature of the sun, it gives light, radiance, brilliance. The nature of winter is its cold. You'll never get a winter which is warm winter. You'd never get a summer which is cool and pleasant. If you look at a tiger, it's ferocious. You look at a fox, it's its cunning nature. You look at a dog, it's faithful in nature. So everything around you, whether be it objects, whether you look at nature, whether you look at the animals, everything has a nature and it's true to it. Now, my question is, it is fundamental that you got to ask yourself, what is your nature? I have a nature. You have a nature. It is important as leaders or heads of family or heads of organizations. It's important that you identify, as parents, you need to identify nature of your children. Help them analyze what is their nature. As leaders of organizations, perhaps you need to identify what are the talents of your employees so that you can give them the best field that is ideal for them. Now, I'm just trying to share a nature of a personality. Now, when you take a look at this constitution, as I've said, swadharma is your predominant nature. So when you look at this constitution, let's say, for example, I have 40% inclination towards philosophy, means I have 40% inclination towards vasanas for philosophy. 15% I have, let's say, towards Carnatic music. 15% towards trekking, 10% towards badminton, etc. These are the various interests I have. So the swadharma, my predominant nature would be philosophy. So it is important that I should choose swadharma as philosophy. I can't choose, I should not choose trekking or literature or music as my dharma, as my swadharma. It would not be. You may say, sir, if it's convenient for me, should I not choose it? Even if it's convenient for you, even if you find yourself successful in doing it, don't get into it. The famous words of the Gita in the 3rd chapter, he says, Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushthitat swadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavaha. Bhaya, there is so much of fear. It's fraught with fear. So here is the mantra which says, better is swadharma without merit. Doesn't matter. You may get into a field which is your nature without merit. Doesn't matter. Then paradharma well performed. You may get into a paradharmic field and find success there. But it's better to be in swadharma without merit. He goes one step ahead and says, better is death in swadharma. It's better I die being an unsuccessful philosopher than being a successful in a paradharmic field. So never ever enter a field because it is convenient for you, because there is a reward or a return, or because there's a demand or a following. Always ensure, am I cut out for it? Is it my nature? And if you get into a field which is your predominant nature, you will find a great satisfaction in the work. You'll find the work itself will give you great rewards. You'll find no friction within. A simple example would be if you're driving your vehicle uphill, vis-a-vis the vehicle being driven downhill. When you're driving uphill, there's so much of effort. But the same thing when you're coming downhill, it's effortless. So when you are going uphill is paradharma. You're going against everything is against you. It's an uphill task, as they say. But when you're going downhill, you go with the flow, you go with the nature. Or another example you can think is a headwind and a tailwind. When you're traveling in flight, when the wind is along with the flight, the direction of the flight, it's called tailwind. So the flying becomes much faster, a little faster than going headwind. If you're going against the wind, it's called headwind. So paradharma is headwind, swadharma is tailwind. So choose a field which is your swadharma, which is your predominant nature. Even if it is demanding, if it is challenging, it may not be easy. Never mind, you get into it. You will find great satisfaction. and you will be ultimately be rewarded by your efforts. Now I'm giving out the ninefold path. First, I said, is the chronology of action. Second, I said you must choose your swadharma, which is your predominant nature. The third is, having chosen a field which is your predominant nature, you should learn to operate on reason. Having chosen the field which you love to do, if you ask me, sir, why am I teaching philosophy? Now, close over 30 years now, I'm into this field. The moment I knew about this philosophy, there was a natural affinity to it. And I took to it very innocently, not knowing that my whole life will be devoured or consumed by doing something like this. And I do it with such passion, and I find great joy. And I'm right now enjoying the fact that I'm able to connect with you all. I'm able to communicate something which means something to me. So I'm doing something which I love to do, which I'm very passionate. But at the same time, I should not be swayed by the emotions. I should not be swayed by my feelings. I should not operate on my impulses or moods or likes and dislikes. So having chosen the field, what you like, don't operate on likes. I don't know whether you like what I'm saying. What I'm trying to get to is, I am doing what I like to do. I'm in a field which is my swadharma, but having chosen, I'm not operating on my likes and dislikes. Remember yesterday we learned, in earlier sessions we learned, your likes and dislikes are your own enemies. Raga dvesha viyuktaistu vishayanindriyaischaran. Atmavashair vidheyatma prasadamadigatchati. You get the prasada only when you operate devoid of likes and dislikes. Your likes and dislikes are your own enemies. Imagine I send a message to the organizers and say, I'm sorry, I'm not in a good mood to talk, so please cancel the event. They will say, what kind of a fellow is this person? You have given a word, we have promoted, we have let people know that there is this weekend with wisdom, and you are agreed to us that there will be 4 sessions. Now suddenly you say, I don't like to talk. I cannot afford, even if I don't like to talk, I ought to talk, because I have an obligation. Or I may say, I love to talk to you, so I keep on talking. And I don't talk which makes sense or reason. I don't stick to the subject. So it is important that having chosen a field which is your predominant nature, you thereafter operate on obligation and reason. You do what ought to be done. Remember this. You do what ought to be done. You do it when it ought to be done. I am repeating it again. Please take note. When you act on reason, you do when what ought to be done first, whatever needs to be done should be done. And when it ought to be done, it ought to be done. If somebody knocks at your door for help, it becomes your obligation in a way. If you feel you're obliged, and if you give your word that I would be of help, you should be of help. And you should be of help when it serves the purpose, when it be of helpful to that person. If I help at a time which is convenient for me, not being mindful whether it's going to help that person, what is use of the help? So when you do your obligation, it must be done. The right action should be done when it ought to be done. So this is the third element on the ninefold path. So I've said so far, the chronology of action, the vasana, thought, desire, action. I'm reiterating and repeating so you don't miss the concept. Then I've said you must identify your predominant nature, your swadharma. Having got into the field which you like to do, act on reason. What is the right thing for you to do? You got to do it. You do it. What ought to be done? When ought to be done? In fact, I'm just quoting a beautiful phrase of Thomas Huxley. In fact, it's a longish quote, but it's worth referring to it because it conveys the message. Thomas Huxley says, perhaps the most valuable result of all education is the ability in you to apply yourself to do a thing you have to do when it ought to be done, whether you like it or not. It is the first lesson that ought to be learned. And however early a man's training begins, it is probably the last lesson a person learns thoroughly. The ability to do a thing when you ought to do, what you ought to do, whether you like it or not. But you find however early a man's training begins, it's perhaps the last thing he learns thoroughly. So wise soul shared it so beautifully. Thomas Huxley. Now, the fourth point is you must integrate your head and heart. There must be an integration. There must be a beautiful marriage of your head and heart in everything that's done. Now, the head and the heart, the head, what you call as the anatomical head, is the philosophical intellect. The anatomical heart is the philosophical mind. So what you call as the head means the intellect in philosophical parlance, the buddhi. What you call as the heart is the philosophical mind, the manas. So whatever actions you do, it must have an integration of your head and heart. Now, what is that integration of head and heart? When there is anything that you perform, there must be a marriage, means your mind must feel what your intellect understands. Your job of the intellect is to understand, rationalize, but your mind must feel with it. And what your intellect understands, your mind must feel. So intellect understands what the mind feels, and the mind feels what the intellect understands. So there is not a tug of war. There is no conflict between the head and heart. Many a time your mind says certain things. Many a time your intellect says certain things. And there is no, you feel like doing certain things, but you know it is not the right thing to do. What is the right thing to do, you know, but you don't feel like doing it. You know, I need to eat the right food, but I don't like to eat it. I like to eat the junk food, but intellect says you should not eat it. So there is that conflict. And I hope you all are able to relate to that idea. So when there is a confluence, a marriage of head and heart, you feel there is a beautiful symphony. As there's a saying, hot heads and cold hearts have never solved anything in life. When somebody gives emotional love to you, if you're cold-hearted to it, you can't relate to that person. There's no relationship. Or if you operate on hot head, as you don't you say in English language, he's so hot-headed, means he has no control over his emotions. So hot heads and cold hearts have never solved anything. So what am I saying? Your heart should cool the head, and your head should guide the heart. So whenever your head is hot, your heart should cool it. And if your heart is operating, your head should guide, means there must be some the wisdom that should guide your emotions. Otherwise, you will be swayed by the play or the ploy of your mind or the ploy of your emotions. You must integrate the head and the heart. Now, moving on, the fourth point is any action you perform, action is a neutral element. Any action one performs, action is neutral. What determines the action you're performing is right or wrong is the intention or the attitude behind the action. So what is the intention or the attitude behind the action? Action is neither good nor bad per se. The act of killing being the same, when one performs an action, one is penalized for that act. The same act, when it's done by the other, is awarded, rewarded, celebrated. When a terrorist takes a gun and starts shooting, he also has his agenda. But when he does that, it is not accepted. He's not pardoned for his acts. He's punished. He does in such fear. He does in anonymity. He doesn't want himself to be revealed. He doesn't announce to the world of his intentions. But the same act of killing, when a soldier in a war takes up an arm to defend his country, is rewarded. So the action being the same, the act of killing, one is good, other is bad. Action being the same. Don't we see in the West, especially, it happens so often that these young students, somehow they get hold of a gun or some weapon of destruction and they go causing damage and havoc to innocent children. Not accepted. That action is wrong. Because you've destroyed lives of others, innocent lives. Because you have a hidden agenda. A few years ago, have we not seen a man in New Zealand takes an automatic gun, goes into a mosque while people, men, women, children were in prayer. He goes into the mosque and openly starts shooting them point blank. Point blank, he starts shooting them. A heap of bodies. How much of bitterness and hatred he must be having in his heart that he had to express in such a manner. Again, the act of killing being the same, no way he is pardoned, he is punished. A patient may die in the hands of a doctor. You don't go and sue a case against a doctor because you say a patient died. No, the doctor has no intention of killing the patient. So what protects your actions you perform is the intention. So therefore, you should strive constantly on trying to work on what are your intentions? What is the reason you're doing whatever you're doing? Now, based on the kind of intentions you carry, the sixth point is your actions fall under three types, the three types of actions. The three types of actions are actions can either be selfish, actions can be unselfish, or actions can be selfless. So a selfish action, the action is the same. Like this action I'm performing is the same action. This can be a gross selfish act. The same action I'm performing can be a noble, unselfish act. The same action I'm performing can be the highest selfless act. Action doesn't need to be the same. Action doesn't need to be different. I'm sorry. The action being the same, what changes the characteristics of the action is selfish, unselfish, which is the motive, or selflessness is no motive. A selfish person is constantly entertaining thoughts of himself, I and mine. He's only working for his own personal interest. And sometimes you hear of people how gross and how selfish can they become. I came to know of a family, a man, the moment he knew that his mother had passed away, he was living upstairs. His mother had passed away at an odd hour. The news came to him. He quickly rushed down. He took a thumb impression of his mother's dead body, from his mother's dead body, thumb impression he has taken on a blank stamp paper. And then tried his best to erase that impression of that ink on the thumb. And people who were very close, who saw that, just couldn't fathom it. As you hear this, can you fathom it? You take an impression from your own mother's dead body on a stamp paper for what? Just for your own gratification, for your own benefit, for your own interest, you can stoop to that low level? I find such an act is insulting, is barbaric, is inhuman. So much so in the Gita, it says, Bhunjate te tvagam papaha ye pachantyatma karanat, atma karanat. Those who cook for themselves, they eat sin, he says. So if you live a life only to advance your own well-being, your own welfare, your own interest, you have a hidden agenda of your own personal well-being, those are the people who cook for themselves. They don't enjoy what they eat sin. Papam, he says. Atma karanat, they eat papaha. And then he says, Tairdatta na prasadayibhya yo bhungte stena yevasaha. Stenaha. He who enjoys something without contributing to them is a thief, he says. Stenaha. The rajasic and tamasic kind of people, they consume the world without contributing, or they cook for themselves and eat sin. In fact, the sattvic people are of a different breed. The sattvic people eat the remnants of their sacrifice. Whatever sacrifices they do, they lead a life of sacrifice. As we said, they work for a higher cause. They work for a cause beyond themselves. And whatever comes out of their hard effort, they are quite content, whatever they are provided for. They don't have a hidden agenda to share. Horace Greeley says the darkest hour of life, the darkest moment of your life is when you plan to get money without earning it. When you plan to get something without working for it, that is the darkest moment of your life. So one who lives this kind of a life, he lives a life of committing a sin. So whenever you perform an action, how do you know whether your action is selfish or unselfish? You would know what by the reaction. What is the feedback you get? Like right now, I'm getting a feedback. Means I'm getting some noise I'm getting. If everybody could be, can you mute themselves? That would be great. So whenever you perform a selfish action, whenever there is a reaction to an action, so sin is not in the performance of an action. There's no action per se is right or wrong, as we said. But when you perform an action, and if there is a feedback, if there's a reaction that you get from an action, that is a sin. So your conscience, when your conscience confronts you, it is a sin. If I do and my conscience stands against me and says, what you're doing is wrong, it stares at you and says, don't do that. The conscience says that to you. I know I'm committing a sin. You do not know what I'm doing, but my conscience stands and confronts me. I'm committing a sin. But when the same conscience comforts me, whatever I'm doing, if gives me a sense of comfort, then I am leading a life of satyam. Then I'm leading a life of truthfulness. And those who lead a life of satyam, as William Wordsworth says, they who truth and wisdom lead can gather honey from a weed, he says. You can gather honey from a weed means you can lead a most seemingly innocuous, simple, honest, humble life, but you will find honey in that. You don't have to have an extraordinary and extravagant. You don't have to be gaudy. You can be simple. You can lead an honest life. You will find the very essence. It's poetic. You can't literally search for honey in weeds. There's no honey in weeds, but it's poetic. But you need to lead a life of truth and wisdom. And how do you know, am I leading a life of truth or wisdom? I know my conscience tells me. So as long as you're true to your conscience, you're not false to anybody else. This is what the great William Shakespeare says, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as night the day. And if you do that, if you are true to yourself, thou canst not then be false to any man. If you are true to yourself, then you are not false to anybody else. So the most difficult thing is to be true to yourself. So if your motive is selfish, you would live a life of sin. But those people who think of a cause beyond themselves, who think of an unselfish or a higher cause, and in order to identify with a higher cause, Hariji, if I can ask you, what is it that is required to identify with a higher cause?
Hari Om Guruji. I think the most essential thing is to think beyond oneself. I think you have to have a higher cause rather than a lower objective. So you have to expand your objective. So if you are even at a mundane level talking of selling sewing machines in Andhra Pradesh, you will have to expand it to selling machines all over South India, and then further to all over India, all over the world, and expand it to not just machines, but other things. So you keep expanding and making the objective higher. The moment it becomes higher, it goes beyond yourself. I don't know whether I said the right thing, Sunji.
No, Hariji, you're absolutely right. The objective is to constantly keep raising the goal, serving a larger cause, a greater cause. But what is it that is directly responsible for you to connect with the goal you can conceive? Okay. Hariji wants to clarify something.
Number one, we have to turn inside rather than looking outside. That is extreme. You have to be introverted. Number two, to go beyond the body, mind, and intellect. Try to dissociate step by step with our BMI. The moment we start looking into ourselves, then we will be going higher and higher.
Right. In fact, I'm putting it in, I'm quoting Samuel Coleridge here. He says, common cause is an uncommon degree, is what the world calls wisdom. Is very uncommon. So what we are talking weekend with wisdom. I run a wisdom foundation. The objective is to impart wisdom. The objective is to imbibe wisdom. But how much wisdom you have, if there is one test, one acid test to find out how much wisdom you have, is how much selfish you are, how unselfish you are, how sacrificial you are. So the more the wisdom you have, that wisdom in you will be able to larger your vision. You will be able to envision a larger and a greater purpose beyond yourself. And the more the wisdom you are endowed, to that extent you will be able to serve a cause, a greater purpose. Anything to say, Hariji?
No, that's correct. Yeah, I will know.
So, and the ultimate wisdom, when one has that profundity of the intellect and the wisdom, your actions go beyond merely being selfish or unselfish. You reach the echelon of action. You reach the pinnacle of action, which is to perform selfless actions. To perform selfless action is hardly known or understood. When your actions are driven with the sole objective attaining self-realization, you want to attain the highest objective of attaining moksha or enlightenment, then your actions are of selfless nature. You have nothing to do with the good or bad. As in the text, Bhajagovindam, Adi Shankaracharya says, Punya apunya vivarjita pantaha. You go beyond the good and the bad. In fact, if you know the context of the Bhagavad Gita was given Senayor Ubhayor Madhye, in between the two armies. One side was the Kaurava forces, which symbolized adharma. One side were the Pandava forces, which symbolized dharma. So the Bhagavad Gita, the sermon which the Lord gave to Arjuna, was sandwiched between adharma and dharma. So the path to the reality has got nothing to do with dharma or dharma. So selfless action is to perform actions which karyam karma, which ought to be done. Whatever is your dharma, whatever is your obligatory karma, you do it. Then your actions are selfless. There is no motive, hidden agenda. There's nothing you seek for it, nor you seek for this. What you seek is for your own spiritual upliftment or spiritual enlightenment. Then your actions are of selfless nature. And such actions are supported by your conscience. And the eighth point is, when you get into that frequency of having conceived a goal and started performing actions, what gives you, what takes you to your goal is that consistency of purpose. One of the most important qualities is to have that consistency. It's a very common, we find that people are not consistent in what they do. They do, but they are not consistent. The opposite of consistency is they do too many things. They're not able to keep a sense of discipline. They're erratic. So much so, the famous verse from the Gita, in fact, it is said to be the geometrical center of the Gita. The 9th chapter of the Gita, the 22nd verse, the famous words of the Gita, the Lord says, Ananyaschintayanto maam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Whether you want to attain yoga or kshema, yoga is spiritual union, kshema is material growth. Whatever be your objective in life, the only way you reach that goal, the only way you satisfy or fulfill that objective is trying to get into that frequency or the mode of performing action, ananyachinta. To be in that ability to get into that action when you perform action consistently. No anyachinta means once you pick up an action, you must keep performing that same action again and again. Oh, is it, sir? How long? Until it takes you to the goal. Like, don't they say you must have a tunnel vision? What is a tunnel vision? What is tunnel vision, Harishji?
A single-minded focus, like a horse with blinkers.
It doesn't mean that you go into a tunnel, is it?
No.
Oh, I thought you must go into a tunnel, Harishji. Thanks for clarifying. Right, you must have your blinkers on, as they say. You should not allow your mind to wander. You should not become like a feather in a summer breeze, not be going here, there. You just get into that. You get into an action, and once you get into an action with a consistency, it's your intellect that takes you. your intellect that keeps that action until it takes you to the goal. So the eighth ingredient is consistency of action. Absolutely, Annapurnama, no peripheral distractions. There's nothing that is distracting you, nothing that can take you away from course. Especially that's what these race horses in the race course, they have the blinkers so that they don't get distracted with all the euphoria and all that's happening around them, so that they can keep their focus to the track. So it is your intellect that keeps you onto the track, to the focus, so that your actions are driven to the cause. And once you do that, you will be able to get into the frequency of what is an ideal action. The ninth point is an ideal action. An ideal action has two essential ingredients. The two essential ingredients of an ideal action. An ideal action, I can't get into the detail, but I'll just briefly mention it. An ideal action is an action should generate energy. At the same time, an action should avoid dissipation. So when your actions are ideal, they generate energy. And how do you generate energy? You generate energy by keeping your body dynamic. You surrender your mind to the goal, and you direct your actions towards the goal with your intellect. Mai sarvani karmani. So the verse in the Gita, it says, Nirashir. So the mantra says you must generate energy by keeping your body active, surrender your mind. The intellect should direct actions to the goal. And how do you avoid dissipation of energy is nirasha. There is no future anxieties, no jvaraha. There is no excitement in the present, nor there are past worries. So when you plug in these loopholes of your past worries, future anxieties, and excitement in the present, you avoid dissipation. So there's a beautiful saying, if yesterday was lost in grief, please don't lose today by keeping it in your mind. If yesterday was lost, why are you losing this moment? This is what we keep doing in our mind constantly. Your mind goes through a constant soliloquy. It goes on repeating. It constantly keeps chattering. It keeps muttering. It keeps remembering. Why is your mind living in the past, dead past? If you can snap that, so much of your valuable energy which is being dissipated can be conserved. So the ninefold path which I've mentioned, first was the chronology of action. The second was the predominant nature, you must use your swadharma. The third, we said, having chosen a swadharmic field, you must operate on reason. You do what ought to be done when it ought to be done. The fourth, we said, you must learn to integrate your head and heart. Bring the softness of your heart, bring the sharpness of the head. There must be an integration. The fifth, we said, action is neutral. No action is good or bad. So don't ever judge a person by what you see them do. Action is neutral. What determines an action is the intention. Then we said that three types of action: selfish, unselfish, and selfless. And then we further said that it is your conscience that gives you that comfort. If your conscience supports your actions, you're leading a life of satyam. But if your conscience confronts you, you are leading a life of sin. Then we said, what takes you towards your goal is consistency of purpose. And then lastly, we said an ideal action should generate energy. At the same time, it should avoid dissipation of energy. Now, the last element I would like to clarify is what are the qualities of the wise. A wise man, a man who's endowed with wisdom, you would find these few qualities. They're not exhaustive, but generally a few highlighted points. The first is he must be knowledgeable. Second, humble. Third, he must be endowed with a sharp intellect. He must be dynamic yet composed. A true leader, a wise man is adorable. Means he must be admired. You must have that quality where people look up to you. A wise man always leads the way, does not point the way. And the trait of a wise man is he conceives and works towards a common goal. Let me briefly expand on it. So the first thing is a wise man is very knowledgeable. He's well informed of his own field of activity. We are talking of action. We're talking of how you must ensure that whatever action you perform, you must have enough knowledge of that. And wherever there is knowledge, what's the first thing that expresses once you have knowledge of anything? What is the first expression of knowledge? Again, I'm not asking to question or challenge you all. As I've said, the first session, I said that is just to make you all think along, to draw out the knowledge from you. I couldn't employ that methodology. But the usual satsangs I take, so much of interaction. So the answers are pouring in. The first expression of knowledge is ahankar, arrogance. Even when you tell a child more than once, the child says, Mama, why are you telling me? I know, no. There's pride, there's ahankar, there's arrogance. So to arrest this arrogance which arises from vidya, a man, a true leader, a man of wisdom is very humble. That's why they say vidya and vinaya. The quality of a brahmana, a sattvic man, a wise man is vidya, vinaya sampanne, brahmane gavihastini. Shunichaiva shvapake cha panditaha samadarshinaha. So a quality of a brahmana, a wise man, is who has vidya and vinaya. So no arrogance. So a wise man is knowledgeable. A wise man, who is a wise man? He says, he who learns from everyone is wise. One who has that quality or attribute to learn from everyone is a wise man. There is no inhibition. It can be your tanga wala, your rickshaw wala. It can be anyone out there who has something to give you. You will learn from that person. So very knowledgeable. He is very humble. He has got a sharp intellect. Now, what is beautiful here, it's such a beautiful concept. It always amazes whenever this thought surfaces. True intellect. What is the measure of true intellect? A sharp intellect. Obviously, a sharp intellect thinks clearly. It is rational. It is able to take correct decisions, sharp decisions in the right interest. But the best aspect of an intellect, which again for self-evaluation, this helps, is in a person who has an intellect would have the sense of proportion. A person who is well knowledgeable, who is intelligent, will have a sense of value. Many people have many values, but what happens is the values that they develop, that they inculcate because of their upbringing or their exposure, they become very rigid in their values. They're not able to adapt that values to different situations or circumstances. But the intellect is you have that proportion. And the best example to talk about sense of value and sense of proportion is, for example, let's say if I'm interested in medicine and I have picked up many medical journals, I've picked up medical books, and I'm well versed, I'm well informed about medicine. But does that make me a qualified doctor? Nah. So one is to have knowledge of medicine. Vis-a-vis, one is the capacity to, why do you go to a doctor, sir? A doctor is one who is able to understand your physical health, your constitution, your specific requirement, and balance the dosage, isn't it? He's able to proportion the combination of medicines or the proportion of medicines or the dosage of medicines. So if sense of value is medicine, the sense of proportion is the dosage. And if the dosage goes wrong, the same medicine which can cure you becomes poison. It destroys you, isn't it? So a quality of a wise man is he has a sharp intellect. The fourth is a wise man, a man of wisdom is dynamic, and yet he's composed. He is all the time bristling with action. While he's acting, he is not jolted, he is not affected by the fruits of his actions. He's active, he's dynamic, but he doesn't allow himself to be affected or jolted by the consequences. So he's always calm and composed. He remains. The quality of a wise man is you remain a sakshi, a witness. You don't jump with excitement. You don't get carried away. You become an objective sakshi or a witness. You are relatively detached to the happenings, yet you are dynamic. The fifth quality is a man of wisdom is very adorable. He's admired by people. People look up to him. Why? What are the qualities that attribute a wise man which people adore him? Why do people adore? Or what is a quality in a man of wisdom that makes him lovable? People love him. Why? Rajima, what do you think?
He takes everybody along, and he's not he doesn't have an ego, which is a bloated feeling of I know everything. So would that be the reason?
Absolutely. In fact, you're right. A person, a leader, you can find this even in organizations, as team leaders. Some people are adored, some people are not loved. Why people are loved or leader is loved is because they have no ego. Hmm? And one more quality, few qualities, but this is something that comes to my mind. One true quality of a leader, we just spoke earlier, is truly unselfish or selfless. So what makes a person adorable is he has no ego and he's extremely unselfish or selfless. So far, we have said that a wise man is very knowledgeable. A wise man is humble. He has got a sharp intellect where he is able to have that sense of proportion to the values he has so that he's able to adapt to various situations and circumstances. He's dynamic, he's active, yet composed. And what brings that composure? He's an objective. He maintains an objective witness. He remains a sakshi to the happenings. He doesn't get affected unduly. He's adored because of his ability to keep his ego in his check. In fact, no ego at all. If at all, there's hardly any ego, no ego. And because of his unselfish nature. Yes, Devi Prasad Garu. Yes, sir.
Sir, what I remember is Dr. Abdul Kalam, the great scientist. I also belong to at the same department, ISRO. So we always remember his great words. His guru, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, used to attribute the success is because of his juniors and the failure is to himself. So that is a true leadership, and we can learn from Sri Krishna also in many occasions, the same thing.
So aptly said, sir. So aptly said. Oh, you are in the same department. Did you get to work with him at some stage?
No, sir. They were very seniors, sir, but in the age wise. But the principles and all are the foundation laid by them. I mean, I wanted to share with all colleagues that this reflects the true spirit of the Lord Krishna's thing. I mean, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai and followed by Dr. Kalam. So thank you, sir, for giving me the chance to in your
No, absolutely. It's so aptly quoted, sir. Aptly quoted. Very true. What a leader. What a leader. Absolutely. Yes. We bow down.
I think you can give one more instance from Krishna's life also, so that we will cherish from your mouth. Your words. A similar thing. We see from Krishna's life many things, no, sir. As a leader also.
Right.
When we run away from the field also at that time, it's not his defeat or something like that. We learn like that. With Jarasandha or many occasions. Something you can share from your life. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right. Now, I have very little time, sir, but I would leave it at that because you know the context and you aptly referred to the philosophical importance, and you referred to the great Kalamji and how they set the tone, and the various references in the Shastras, much profound references. So moving on, the sixth point is a true man, a man of wisdom or a leader always leads the way. He does not point the way, does not show the way. Means whatever he wants others to do, he does it himself. That's the beauty of a man of leader. A man of leader or a man of wisdom demonstrates what is possible by being an example. He doesn't lecture to them. He sets the high standards by he himself doing it. And this is the quality of a leader, quality of a wise man. So much so in the Shastras, you're asking me to quote the Gita. In the Gita, it says, Yadyada charati shreshtaha tat tat eva itara janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanu vartate. Isn't it? Deva Prasad Garu. It's a beautiful verse. Let's chant it. Yadyada charati shreshtaha tat tat eva itara janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanu vartate. Yadyadacharati shrestha, whatever a shrestha, a man of perfection does, that others alone follow. That alone others follow. Whatever standards of perfection you set, others emulate. Whether be it what level of integrity you keep to your work, how disciplined you are, what is how clean you keep your things. You may keep your things clean and tidy, but people will call you OCD. Never mind what people call you, but you must know that you are clean. Is there anything, Devi Prasad Garu?
Thank you, sir. You aptly quoted a very famous thing at the right instance. Thank you very much, sir.
Most welcome. Most welcome. Right. So you had set high standards. You live a life of high values. You demonstrate the best way is to be an example for others. And it's important as parents, as teachers, as leaders, in your own respective fields, in your own rights, you are a leader. And it's important that you must set the right standards so that others look up to you and emulate from you. People follow what you do, not what you say. And that's the verse which gives out the beautiful psychology. And ultimately, so much the truth has been reiterated. The last point is a wise man, a leader. He conceives a common cause. He conceives a common goal. And he inspires others to work for a common cause. He brings in a spirit of a cooperative endeavor. He brings everybody to a common platform to be able to identify with a common cause, which is beyond their own personal interests. And he synergizes, and all that actions resonates towards a common cause, a common goal. And one who is able to do that kind, live that kind of a life, who can live that kind of a life? You may say, sir, it is so profound. The wisdom is so profound. This wisdom is so grand. The Shastras say this knowledge, this wisdom is applicable to people from all walks of life. Anybody, commoner, can lead it. Anybody can live these higher values. It's not exclusive to only those who can lead a life of a recluse or become a sannyasi or a swami. In fact, the Shastras glorify the concept of a Raja Rishi. A Raja Rishi is a beautiful combination. A Raja Rishi means a royal sage. Rishi is a sage. Raja is royalty. Means someone who can be in the din and roar of the work. You can be in the marketplace. You can carry on doing whatever duties, whatever obligations, whatever work demands you. Please carry on doing. At the same time, you bring in that spiritual element. So an ideal combination of you are materially productive, at the same time spiritually detached. You're materially dynamic. You're active. You perform your dharma. Whatever your duties are, you do it. But you do it with grace. You do it with a charm. You are able to inject this higher wisdom. And once you are established in the wisdom, you can rise up to the level of a Raja Rishi. So, if you look at this, the wisdom is at the helm, is at the top. So it's the wisdom that expresses as the clarity of thought in your intellect. And your intellect is that which commands or governs or controls and guides your mind. They say your mind ungoverned wreaks havoc. Your mind, as they say, is a monkey mind. And the mind is that which needs to be disciplined. And with the profundity of wisdom, with the clarity of thought, you keep your mind under control, keep your mind balanced, keep your body dynamic. You will truly conquer the world. You conquer your mind, you have conquered the world. And in these 4 sessions, you have got a glimpse, an insight into the profundity of what the eternal wisdom is. As I've said in the beginning, eternal is something which stood the test of time. And this wisdom has so much relevance today to your lives as much as it did then. So you all should imbibe this wisdom, seek this wisdom, inject this dose of wisdom into your life, and let it transform you, making your lives far more purposeful, far more meaningful, and enrich you in every possible way. So with this, I would conclude my presentation of the eternal wisdom, which indeed is a manual which these great masters have left for us to guide humanity in the right direction. And I bow down along with you all to the great gurus of yore to have given this wisdom to uplift us spiritually. And we can, no way, perhaps the only way we can pay back is by imbibing and following their wisdom.
Thank you, Vinayji. And it was such a wonderful, wonderful experience. Rajiji, would you like to share something?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much. Can I ask Gayatri Ma to kindly share the screen? Yeah. Namaskaram. We are very happy to announce that Vinayji will be conducting a residential wisdom retreat at Pragati Resorts, Hyderabad, from March 4th to the 7th. During this unique experience, Vinayji will be taking us through select verses of the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This will enable us to evaluate our spiritual quotient and plan our spiritual evolution. We look forward to welcoming you to this important and crucial step in your life's journey. Should you need any information or assistance, we would be happy to be of help. Please feel free to call Gayatri on, you can note it down please, 9866009769. I repeat, 9866009769, or me, Raji, on 9848063131. I repeat, 9848063131. Once you contact us, either one of us, we will send you all the information that is required. Hari Om.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. Could we take any questions or sharing, Vinayji?
Yeah, if any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yes. Requesting all of you to post your questions in the chat box, or if you would like to speak up, you could raise your hand and unmute yourself. Hariji has raised his hand. Please go ahead, Hariji.
On the morning session, we were talking about renunciation in depth. So if we translate renunciation as sannyas, how will we be able to differentiate between renunciation and tyaga? The difference between a sannyasi and a tyagi.
So the question you're asking is, what is the difference between sannyasa or sannyasi and a tyagi? Is it?
Yeah. Or is it the same? If we say renunciation and tyaga.
So it can be interpreted as the same. Tyaga is renunciation, or sannyasa is the same, unless it is interpreted in a different context. But
okay,
at this point, we could say broadly, sannyasa and tyaga are one and the same.
Okay.
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 Thank you so much. So it was a wonderful series of talks. And once again, on behalf of Indica Moksha, I would like to extend our gratitude to Wisdom Foundation and Vinayji for accepting our invite and curating these wonderful talks. I really enjoyed, and I'm taking back a lot of insights along with me. I'm pretty sure the viewers also have a lot to dwell, to reflect on, and to practice as we go along in our paths of seeking. So with that, we would also ask all of you to stay connected with Advaita Academy and Indica Moksha for further talks on Advaita Vedanta. You could find us on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, in the names Advaita Academy and Indica Moksha, respectively. So please, follow us on these channels. Also, our YouTube channel, which is Advaita Academy, We'll also have the talks which just happened, over these 2 days of Vinayji, and all the other talks of previous speakers also are there. So looking forward to meeting all of you again in the upcoming talks. And once again, thank you to all. Let's conclude this series with a Shanti Mantra.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.